It's the conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to give my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We've been on a hiatus here with the conversation, but we are back with the wonderful Dave and the wonderful Harold. They've been taking care of some business and personal issues, and we've all missed you and letting you see our insight on the political and government world and all things conversational. Well, we're going to talk about this because it's always a hot topic, but it seems that when voting season comes, these issues are always brought to the forefront, even though these issues are things that are being worked on year round. Voter confusion, distractions, restrictions, whatever you want to call it. We've had a lot of instances in your neck of the wood, Harold, down there in Florida, where people are now getting arrested for voter fraud.
It is, and those that you're referring to, basically were arrested for doing what they had been given permission to do. And I find that again, if you ask me to apply and then I apply, even though I know I have a quote unquote checkered past, and you approve my application and send me a voter registration card, I basically operate under the assumption that I've been approved and I'm legally able to cast a ballot or cast my vote. However, with this quote unquote voter integrity, unit that's now been deployed by our grateful governor, he's now really taken this whole issue of voter integrity in a whole nother direction. That's really now opening our eyes as to what the true intent was, is really just to really create some type of publicity stunt. And unfortunately, these individuals are being victimized as a result of it. And it's out of the, I think, 20 persons that were arrested, I think 17 or 19 were Democrats, and another handful may have been Republican or other party. But I just think just setting people to vote and then arresting them when they vote, it definitely sends a distasteful response as it relates to this whole idea of voting and the integrity of those that are responsible for helping us gain access to that constitutional right.
Well, and one of the things that bother me is we're finding out that it's not that someone's lying on their application. They're putting things in truthfully, and then they're being arrested for fraud. And I think that's what's causing some of the confusion. Dave, what's your take on this?
Well, and it's weird because, they are, you have this thing where you pass a law, say, okay, felons, convicted felons, you can vote, but unless you've been convicted of murder or a sex offense. And so these folks who are convicted felons who, they fit that exception, right? They apply, and like you say, there isn't fraud, right? This is the thing is there's no fraud. At no point does anyone misrepresent who they are or what they were convicted of. They're just like, we're not sure. And they get the approval and they go vote. And, and now it's interesting, a little news item came out that now when people sign off on their probation paperwork, they've inserted in Florida a little codicil way down at the bottom that says basically it's your responsibility to figure out if you're eligible to vote or not. And they've actually put this lawyer language in there, putting the entire burden of assessing whether you are in there to now more unambiguously make it the parolees' problem. But the thing is, like, okay, so that wasn't there before, right? If you had to add the codicil in, then it wasn't there before. And this idea that the person that that just applying is somehow wrong, right? And it seems bizarre. It seems like a reach. But if you have a voter integrity unit and voter fraud is thin on the ground, you've got to reach for these technicalities to come up with some and then it provides red meat for your voters because the people they've got are disproportionately people of color, and it's that kind of that dog whistle, that we're and you're playing into all the racial stereotypes, and it fits DeSantis. I mean, this is perfectly fits his narrative of the world. Yeah, Harold.
Go ahead, Harold. You were
No, I agree with you 100%. And I find something ironic is when you look at the demographics. Let's just look at the raw numbers. You look at the majority of the people that were arrested were black. When you look at the majority of the people that were arrested were Democrat. When you look at the fact that it was also reported that the community called the Village of Palm Beach had a number of people that voted twice. And they were not in front of cameras. They were not paraded to the media. They were not arrested, and charged as these individuals did. And they actually committed, by voting twice, if you ask me. And maybe Dave's a stronger legal analyst than I am. But, the point is how do you now skew this one way and not take both, if you're going to call a spade, let's call all spades a spade and not try to, twist the game, so to speak, to make it appear as if a certain group or a certain demographic is doing something illegal and not those that are actually doing things illegal be accountable.
One of the clips that sparked this conversation, we're going to show a clip from CBS News in Florida. And it's been on the internet for a while, and a lot of people have seen it. And here we go.
Mm-hmm. Where they reduced it to $500 bonds. So it's $1,000.
Oh my God, man! What?
Yes, sir. So unfortunately, right now we're going to have to take you to jail.
I'm like, voter fraud. I voted, but I ain't commit no fraud.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know exactly what happened with it, but you do have a warrant.
So I find it annoying that, normally when you're arrested, you're being told exactly what you're arrested for and the crime that you violated. Who wants to hear a police officer say, well, I don't know what's going on with that, but I got to arrest you? What?
They were not happy with this. And, these are cops talking to people who are convicted murderers or sex offenders. Let's keep that in mind. The cop is coming up and this is who he's talking to, right? Yeah. Normally we're in these situations of, hey, this is someone who, normally we see videos with the cops. It's somebody who's like an honor student who went to the store to get his mother some toilet paper, and he's coming home and getting attacked for no reason. Here, but the cops are kind of like, just, hey man, I just feel bad about this, and that tells you something right there. So I think, but it also goes into that is we are representing, again, we're representing the voter fraud people as a certain group, and we're associating, we're getting black people who are being identified now with crimes, and so it just plays into the fear factor and this idea that Democrats are pushing to get access and to protect this group of people who are as different from us and real Americans, and we're just perpetuating the fears at the same time saying, see, look at this, I'm protecting you from these folks stealing your democracy, because that's what's happening if you're DeSantis, right? You know, and so it's outrageous from our point of view, pure gold from DeSantis's. This is why he's doing so well politically at this point.
And for some of those people that'll jump on the bandwagon and say, well, these people shouldn't be voting anyway. I don't have the clip, but I've watched a bunch of instances. You had instances where a guy was arrested when he was 20 years old, did 15 years in prison, hasn't been to prison or hasn't done anything wrong, and has been a pillar of the community for the last 20 years of his life. He got out of jail 20 years ago. He gets approved to vote, and he vote. He's like, all the things I've done, and this is what you're arresting me for now? Like, are you kidding me?
And again, I didn't, I never misrepresented. I never lied. You could have told me I couldn't vote. I would have been okay with it, right?
Yeah, because he hadn't voted. He said I hadn't voted for 2 decades. I was told I couldn't vote. And now you approved me for voting. So I voted, and now I'm arrested. So when people say, well, why are they confused? That would confuse me.
Yeah, are they confused?
Well, I think also another component of it.
Go ahead, Harold.
Sorry. I was going to say, also another component is the manner in which the whole process has been reversed, where they used to check you on the front end to make sure you're eligible. In this instance, they approved you and then checked you on the back end conveniently after the election, which is what set the stage for all of this to transpire. So why not again? You submit an application. If they approve you, you're assuming that the state did its due diligence in making sure that you're able to cast that ballot, versus now waiting until after you cast it to say, hey, listen. And then all of a sudden now these are the same people that the state directly sent out, or individuals directly went to their homes to help them register to vote.
Well, conspiracy theorists
it stinks.
Conspiracy theorists would say they're doing that so that they can show that there's voter fraud going on, or if certain people lose an election, this is why. It's ammunition to put into that gun of saying, well, Dave lost to Harold because look at all the people that we found that illegally voted. And this is why Dave beat Harold.
Well, and
I'll say, let's go back to the villages of Palm Beach. I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No. I mean, yeah, there's that. And there's also, I mean, that meme, that idea of Democrats going out, registering people to vote, and that whole concept of that Democrats are going out and fraudulently getting people, and that has been an ongoing. I don't know if it's conspiracy theory. It's certainly, there have been people who've generated that, and that has been an active one, right? And so it plays very much into that, which of course is why we get shenanigans coming from the right so often. Is people are like, hey, the Democrats are doing it, so it's okay for us to do whatever it is, and you hear that amongst the election deniers. You hear that when you get insights into the training that they're giving to poll watchers, these folks who are lurking around the ballot drop boxes in Arizona, in armed and in tactical gear, and they've been building these groups of people, and this is what I think we're going to see this year and in the future, is these groups of right-wing poll watchers who are they're convinced of this fact, right? And so feeding into what is an ongoing narrative confirms not everyone, people on the right are very are queued up to believe this. This is going to confirm a lot of other stories they have. So it goes beyond just these 20 people and just Florida and just DeSantis. It goes into this worldview that there's a lot of this going on, when in fact there isn't. And in fact, in Florida, Democratic registrations and their registration efforts have lagged. and Republicans have been exceeding Democrats in Florida in their registration drives, and so Republicans are the ones who are out very heavily registering. But it's very fueled by this narrative that the Democrats are doing all these tricky things. We've got to get in there against them.
Hey, I fly under the radar. I register independent, so nobody bothers me. But we've already seen people from January 6th, people who were supportive of January 6th, saying, "See, this is why we did what we did, because these were the things that were happening." And this is why the election was stolen. It creates a mess. It's creating a mess. Sometimes things are being done where it's given the illusion that it's helping, but it's actually making it worse.
And we have to see if it does make it worse. And where it makes it worse is if it affects turnout numbers. Fraud, not fraud. I'm even skeptical that some of these things would actually affect people in the sense of intimidating them at the polls. I doubt that's the case. I'm more skeptical of that. What I'm more worried about is the dampening effect on just going to the polls. People are reluctant to go, and so it's not. I mean, it's not that the guy at the poll scares me. It's that I think there might be a guy at the polls, that the polls might be a dangerous place, right? Or a contentious place. And so Americans are already on the border. Most don't vote, right? So dampening turnout. Now, the thing is, it can dampen turnout on the right-wing side, but they've been fired up. And their narrative they seem to have a very fired up base at this point. So the polling says, and so we're gonna have to see what happens. And we're looking at a very bad election day for Democrats next week. So we'll have to see just how bad.
Harold, what were you gonna say?
Well, again, when we go back and look at all of that, and I agree with Dave where you have a lot of theories being spewed out there, and then you have these different issues that may come up, which may appear to validate some of those theories, which again, further, I guess, leads that base or leads that group that embraces those to be even more fired up to come out here and vote or to intimidate or whatever tactics they choose to use. Again, my concern is, in addition to that, when I look at the fact that if you commit a felony, you're ineligible to vote, but it doesn't stop you from running for office, because when we have situations where, you have, even in Florida, one of the January 6th defendants who's in jail is running for a state house seat. You have, I think there's another state, I want to say Indiana, that gentleman, he's running for, I think, Indiana State House, and, he's in jail on murder. Not conviction, but a murder accusations or allegations. So where is the line drawn? Because here you have people that are accused of committing the crime of fraud for voters, which I think, you're saying me, but I don't know of any other felonies where you pay a $500 fine or $500 bail, to get out of jail and then have to go back and deal with whatever. Usually felonies will be much more costly when it comes to those types of crimes. So it now brings skepticism to this whole situation that our governor, DeSantis, has forth. And now it's starting to backfire and not give him the type of steam that he thought he was going to gain from it. And now people are starting to question really this whole notion of voting. Is it really a ploy more so than actually trying to make sure the voting process has some level of integrity? But if those that are around it don't have integrity, it contaminates it. And so now we're right back to where we started.
Is there anything in that you've noticed going on in North Carolina, in your neck of the wood, Dave, that would bring alarm to you?
No, but I don't get out a lot, and let's face it, I'm not the demographic they're trying to suppress. I mean, I don't have people try to keep 50-year-old white guys, 59-year-old white guys from voting, right? Not that I'm aware of, right? But that always puts me in an uncomfortable position. What do I say? No, and again, like I say, I think it's about the narrative. It's about keeping people in their lane, and I think that the Republicans have got a good message at this point that that works for them with their core, their hardcore base, and you kind of hoped that the folks that were not in that hardcore base would be alienated by it, but with the economy and other issues, kind of, abortion was helping Democrats for a while, but that kind of played out early, and the economy just keeps on taking from Biden, and it just seems it with some dismay I've been watching 538's predictions of the election swing in Russia.
Jeez.
What are they called? The right wing's favor, right? Republicans favor.
I don't know if you did that by
correctly.
accident or you did that on purpose.
No, that was total Freudian slip.
I think hit the Russia wing.
Well, and there's a lot of. Well, part of the problem is that these are folks that play from the same rhetorical playbook. And you get a meme going, you get a conspiracy going, you accuse other people of doing what you do yourself. Sound familiar? And so I frequently am shocked. But at the same time, I think the big point is that the folks that swing, right, that small, increasingly small group of folks that swing are. Abortion is one thing that was pushing them towards the Democratic side, but the economy is pushing your right of center folks to ignore the shenanigans and kind of downplay them and vote. So even people, Sherry Beasley looks like she's not going to win, and Ted Budd is,
I have lived up here in North Carolina since 2012, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a Cheryl Beasley expert, but I have not seen as many slanderous commercials towards a candidate before in my life. Every time I turn on the channel, there's 7 Cheryl Beasley ads.
Well, that's
like
the
she's
money.
the devil.
She's the devil, and Ted Budd is a guy who's pro-Trump but not rabidly pro-Trump, and a lot of people are looking at him as being the sweet spot of having Trump supporters support, but not trumpeting it. So people look at him and they look at Sherry Beasley. And they're not deciding, they're not voting between Sherry Beasley and Donald Trump, right? And so there's a feeling that is the sweet spot for Republicans this term, and yeah, you can just they're just slamming the lawyers. I mean, that's the thing I've seen is it's nothing but slander. Well, I don't even slander because they're not lying. Just bring up a lawyer's record, a judge's record, and there's plenty of cases in there that you're letting.
Every judge is going to miss on a bunch on things.
You're letting child sex offenders not be monitored, and I'm sure there was a really important reason there were probably lots of reasons why that law was shot down that had nothing to do with sympathy for child sex offenders. That a lot of the judges who were on that side that struck that law down in North Carolina are being vilified for it.
I just laugh at the ads because when I hear political ads, I'm like, who are they talking to? Because the ad comes on, and it's like, Cheryl Breesley wants to release all prisoners and make our streets unsafe. I'm like, who said release all the prisoners? I'm like, I listen to these ads and I'm like, what are you talking about? But people hear ads and they run with it.
It is the worst part of watching something on Hulu for me is I actually have to watch the ads.
Yeah, go ahead, Harold.
Nope.
I was going to say, and on the flip side of that, part of my frustration is, when I see the Democrats always on the defense and never on offense. And you can never win a game by only playing defense. You have to go on offense because that's where you score points. If you don't have an offensive strategy, you're going to find yourselves being in a weakened position consistently until the point you're overcome. You essentially have been overcome. And I don't know why, and I was thinking about this the other day, in this Christian nation that we live in, I've never seen, and it's increasing almost daily, if not monthly, and so many lies being perpetrated and nobody calling out the lie.
Well, we know where it starts.
Every ad that goes out that's lying and misleading, why not have a counter to that ad so that now you can set the record straight? But if you just let it play and let it play and let it play, it's going to sink in. And like I said, as we had with the big lie on many occasions, and that's what's gotten us in the problems that we're in now. No one called it out in the 4 years it was in office, but then a month after he gets out of office, now you want to talk about the big lie.
It didn't even start then. I'm going to say three things real quick. One is, I'm old enough to remember when politicians used to attack each other's politics. It started when Obama ran. It started with the birth certificate, fake news. That's when everything started to get a little more, it became acceptable to be petty. I had a nephew named Darrell when he was with me. He was 14 years old, and his homework assignment was to watch the debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. He knows nothing about these two people because he's one of those kids that could care anything about government and history or anything, right? So I said, I'm not going to watch this with you because I'm going to be biased. So I want you to watch it by yourself because I know you can't even pronounce the candidates' names correctly. All right? You said Hillary Clinton. Her name is Clinton. Okay? So I already know you don't know what you're talking about. I came back to him an hour and a half to that debate, and I never seen a kid look so miserable. And I said, what's wrong? He said, this is stupid. I said, well, what's stupid about it? He goes, the guy doesn't answer any questions and keeps deflecting. And the lady just sounds like she's saying, I know you are, but what am I? I'm like, this is a 14-year-old's assessment of watching a political debate. And I said, well, I've got to pick one of those. And he said, how do you do this? And I said, adults are asking themselves that question right there. How do you do this? And now we're just in this world. And the third one I was going to say is John McCain. I like John McCain, and I know exactly where he lost. One of the reasons he lost the election. You can find it on YouTube. He was doing a town hall, and a little old lady had the mic, and she said, I don't like Obama. He's a Muslim. He supports terrorists. He's evil. And John McCain snatched the mic from that little old lady and said, we are here to talk about his politics. He is a good man and a loving father, and they all booed him. And I said, well, you just lost that room. You lost that state. That's over. Because he wouldn't attack Obama as a person and be petty. He attacked the politics that he didn't agree. Are we ever going to get back to that?
I would say if we do, it'll take a while. If we do, it'll take probably 3 lifetimes, a couple of 14 generations, and the next Christ, maybe the second coming. I don't know.
No, Harold. Harold, you ruined the perfect response when you both just said,
I heard noises. I mean, I don't know what was going on with Dave, but I heard some noises.
That was the perfect response. Just
That was like, yeah.
speaking of calamities and and what about have you been paying attention to the Senate race with Herschel Walker in Georgia?
Can't miss it. Can't miss it.
Let's play a wonderful clip compliments of Jimmy Kimmel Live. This is my favorite part of this.
God.
About this guy. He changes the entire narrative of the left. We're a party of racists, Sean. Me and you're a racist. The Republican Party's racist. Well, what happens when the Republican Party elects and nominates Herschel Walker, an African-American black Heisman Trophy winner? Everybody in San Francisco is going to jump off a bridge if we elect this man. A black conservative beats a black liberal in Georgia. They're scared to death of Herschel Walker because if Herschel Walker becomes a Republican, maybe every other young child in America of color might want to be a Republican.
Okay.
I was getting some major feedback on that, so it was literally painful to listen to. I think even without the echo chamber effect that I got on this side, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, I got it.
That is, of course, the inevitable. There's something when the Republicans nominated Herschel Walker, there was a certain disingenuousness about it, right? It's kind of this thing of like, you've nominated a black candidate, and to run in Georgia against another, so it was kind of like, that's a bit on the nose, don't you think, guys? And then of course they can go and make the claim that, hey, any attack on him is racist, right? Because they complain that gets said about them, so now it's their chance to do it. So there's a little bit of him revealing, I think, their whole idea, not that Herschel Walker was the great guy for the job, but that this is what he is to them, right? He is the there's that old narrative of the they used to talk about OJ. Sociologists would say that there was an idea that some African American men were okay, they were the good ones, like OJ, right? And so the idea of having a safe black man, right? Because it's Herschel Walker, right? It's just kind of like
the funny part is
cravenness of it, the crassness.
The funny part is them not knowing that they ended up picking the stereotypical black man of all the stereotypes that we get. The black guy that doesn't take care of his kids and runs away from his responsibilities.
You're saying this. I'm not trucking the stereotype.
No, I'm saying it's the stereotype.
Okay.
Harold knows what I'm talking about. We know the stereotype. We know the stereotypes. So they picked the person that they thought was safe. And I know, and for those of you who doesn't know what he means by safe, hey, I remember being pulled over by a policeman one day, and they had their hands on their guns. And then when I started speaking, he was like, "It's okay, it's one of those." He literally said that.
Really?
The way I talked, it was like, "Oh, he's safe," and they all took their hands off their guns. I could have been a psycho killer, but because I didn't say yo or whatever they thought I was going to say, all of a sudden I'm safe. So Harold, what you got to say about this? Lindsey Graham is a cartoon character. There's so many cartoon characters at this point. What do you got?
I struggle with someone from South Carolina trying to tell me how we should frame racism, because what is and what isn't racist. Considering that Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott, he even indicated that he felt America wasn't racist, but then prior to that, making that statement, he talked about having been stopped multiple times because of race and the people not being able to identify or not believing that he was a senator of the United States. from South Carolina. So, when we look at the whole notion of Herschel Walker, now you're picking someone because of his popularity, not his understanding of policy, not his involvement in the community, because technically he had moved out of Georgia. He was living in Texas, and when they decided they wanted him to come back to Georgia or move back to Georgia, they've leaned more on his popularity and his ability to articulate policy. And that's what's disturbing. In other words, what I've learned more so about this Republican Party of today is they're more concerned about winning a political standpoint than actually doing for the people. What do I mean by that? Going a little bit deeper. Every election cycle, we hear the same issues coming up, but I have yet to hear one solution to any of those issues. So if these issues are pervasive or in perpetuity, that means there is no intent on solving the issue, because guess what? It now closes the door on that being used as a political. We've been talking about immigration. One minute we need comprehensive immigration. One party gets in office and they want to move the needle. The other party gets office, they're not even trying to move the needle. So, had it not been, quote unquote, for cinema, for our friend from West Virginia, I forget his name, but had it not been for those two individuals, the Democrat Party may have been able to do a little bit more. I won't say all of, but a little bit more than what they've been able to do. Although they did get infrastructure, they did get a few other policy pieces. But now, what do we expect from Herschel Walker? Nothing. As you alluded to, the stereotypical individual who really is not invested in the issues. He's not even invested in Georgia if he's living in Texas. So how can, they allow, well, obviously it's legal, but how can it be allowed by the voters to say, hey, listen, we're going to accept him because he's our son. He's our state's son. He brought us a national championship. He did all of these things, but it has nothing to do with his ability to make critical decisions. And I don't know if you saw a speech where he kind of raked the coals with Herschel and a few other people, but he, brought it best. Just because he is gunning a football does not make him a good decision maker on dealing with these critical issues that affect our nation.
Well, they don't want him to. They don't want him to make decisions. That's what we call, and the conspiracy theorists and everyone calls a puppet. That's when people always point out these people in office. Yeah, that's just a puppet. What decisions is he going to make?
And I think also
whatever they tell him.
The way the Republicans got to get the right R word out, are increasingly framing, and I should say the MAGA crowd, right? The DeSantis, the culture warriors folks, they would say that we are telling you, what we're going to do. We're not going to do what the Democrats are doing, right? Which is promoting an extreme woke agenda, flagrant spending, and and so their idea, by perpetuating a concept of a radical liberal agenda and a radical liberal conspiracy, and what they do is they put a picture of the candidate with Pelosi and Biden, right? And so, it's a defensive orientation that gives them an immediate, just by voting for this guy, you're going to block what they're doing that's so horrible.
It's a mess. So one of the questions that we had that someone wanted me to ask, since we've got a couple minutes left, we've got about 10 minutes left, somebody wanted us to ask, because we haven't talked about January 6th a lot. We haven't talked about Donald Trump a lot. We try not to. That part's over. But, of course, it's being brought back because he wants to run again. And so the question was, why do Republicans fear criticizing Donald Trump was one of the questions that was brought to me to ask you two wonderful gentlemen. We've seen the ones who have criticized him, but there's a lot. And look, I do believe that every single person that supports or praises him or doesn't criticize him thinks good of him. I think they just fall in line with the party. But why are most of them afraid to criticize Donald Trump?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to that. One is his unique position. He personalized that role of leadership, and amongst his followers, they adopted him as an image and as a guy, and they inexplicably think he's wonderful and great, and so it rankles them to have that. There's a personalization of loyalty that he creates it, but I think his followers echo it back at him. Also, he is just irrationally vindictive himself, and so criticizing him is a great way to get him to target you, and then his followers jump on board. And they've seen this. They've seen that it doesn't pay to really to do that. So I think there's those things go. I don't know, Harold, your thoughts?
Well, I think part of the challenge is one. I think that we are now moving into a 2.5 party system. You have Democrats, you have Republicans, and then you have MAGA. And many of those that I've even encountered that are on quote unquote MAGA spectrum, they're actually, some of them are libertarians. And I've heard a lot of people who are libertarians moving into or have moved into quote unquote the Republican Party, but now they're starting to kind of separate themselves within the party to take hold of the party. And when I hear some of their rhetoric, when I hear some of their talking points and things of that nature, it makes for interesting observation, because they know that if they got a stronghold at one point, MAGA was quote unquote 20%, 25% of the party. Now it's gotten stronger and larger within the party, which is again slowly starting to show itself. Now, if they separate themselves from the Republican Party, guess what? They know they won't win an election. They know the Republicans won't win an election. And Democrats will pretty much win moving forward until it grows to the point, or one or two goes to the point to where they can, unless they get some type of agreement, they can kind of, unify and to overthrow or to be Democrats. But when it comes to Trump, because of his hold on that base, if I speak against him, it's pretty much doomed as far as me becoming elected or getting out of a primary. And they would rather hold on to their space. The majority of them would rather hold on to their space and trying to separate themselves from him. Now, on the flip side, when you hear about what happened at the most recent Trump rallies, you don't hear the media covering it that much, but the crowd size is dwindling. He's actually losing his influence in one respect, but as far as his ability to now put that messaging out there and hurt certain candidates who might speak against him, and then also embarrass candidates in their face when they come to his rallies, I find it interesting. But, until we find a way.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I gotta remember. No, because you said
yes,
something.
I'm talking about JD Vance. I'm talking about JD Vance. So,
that's what I was gonna say.
But
Ryan JD Vance. Go ahead.
But again, when you've given someone power who really only wields it for their own benefit, and now you've positioned this person, and this is the entire Republican Party is responsible for it. If they had pushed it away early on before it took a stronger hold, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. And if the Democrats had done what they were supposed to do, allowing Joe Biden to run, then, which he would have, I strongly believe that he would have had a much better outcome than Hillary Clinton. We wouldn't be dealing with a lot of things that we're doing. The rise in crime that we saw around up until today, we wouldn't be having a lot of these issues right now. This whole election integrity thing, I don't think would have been an issue if Joe Biden had run against Trump then, because this whole election fraud stuff didn't really come out, even though we knew there was Russian interference. But the election fraud stuff didn't come out until he lost.
Because there's always something going on, but are you saying because he had 4 years of the ability to be the person in power to help grow that base and put out the things he wanted to put out with, which is what made it worse? Sorry, I stumbled over my words. When you said make fun of your own rally, that's exactly what I just thought of, because I was watching the videos with Tim Ryan and JD Vance, and him just saying, you allow someone to tell you kiss his ass. Where do you go from there? Like, why would you even invite him to your rally at this point? So he can make fun of you.
Why am I going to get up on stage? But why am I going to get on stage after he says that and not hit him in the throat? I'm sorry, I said that. You didn't hear that from me.
And there are questions as to whether he was invited. You know, that sometimes, I've heard, although they're not confirmed, but there's ideas that Trump often says, hey, I'll come. And then he puts a candidate in the position of, the worst thing they think of is he starts saying, oh, yeah, I'll come. And they're like, whoa, we don't want you. How do we deal with that? Without snubbing the guy. The titanic ego of Trump can't be overemphasized. This is a guy who, when he got elected, I grew up with Donald Trump. I grew up in New York, and Donald Trump was a local personage, and that's why I just can't believe people don't think he's a damn fool, right? Because we were just constantly exposed to his tomfoolery, and so yeah, he's a jackass of the extreme nature. But he's a showman, right? He's able to get people on board with him, and he's always been able to get a group of people a core group of people on board with him at the expense of a lot of people hating him. And I always thought, this was not going to do well for him as a politician, but it has played a role with the Republican Party. He's fit in there, bringing people on board and cowing other folks in. But his ego, I thought for sure he would get to the White House, and the stature, hey, you're president. It's got to have an impact on you. And you've got to, I thought he would grow into the role because the role was so big, but not big enough to overcome his ego. That's when I talk about his ego. That's my point of reference, that, wow, he's that bad that being the president didn't humble him.
Well, and they also said that he didn't do like normal president things. He slept more than any president. He did meetings when he wanted to. He didn't pay attention at briefings. He's talking to generals that have no idea what he's talking about. Even generals that supported him, once he got there, they were like, what the hell? Well, you supported him. And then you're like, what the hell? So
what the hell? Yeah. And I mean, he is that titanic of an ego that he just keeps moving forward. And his niece said that his thing in life is he's always failed upward, that he gets in a position and, so here he is president, and yes, he has all these problems, but he's president. And so everyone works with him. And so he's gotten this loyalty, right? He builds amongst his followers this intense loyalty at the cost of pissing off a whole bunch of other people. But that is what's keeping him relevant. And so it's kind of this weird thing. I look past Trump to DeSantis, because DeSantis is a much better politician, and probably a better governor. If we look past things that he's done, he's not at a Trump level of incompetence. Let's put it, at least we can say that about the guy. But he seems to do Trump well. He seems to be driving an agenda, this anti-wokeness, and he keeps doing it well. So I think, in the future, it's DeSantis that I wonder about, who doesn't have the flaws of Trump, might be lacking some of that, genius/hubris. But, that's the guy I'm looking at and going, okay, that's that could be a problem, right? What's that going to be like? How far is he going to go? Will he clash with Trump? Because he won't criticize Trump, but he rivals Trump. And so, that'll be the interesting thing when Trump faces actual competition in his party. What happens in between those two? And so I keep waiting for that to happen, because that'll be different than someone from Peoria criticizing him, right? Or wherever.
Is it a sad state to say that if Trump runs, these debates are going to be must-watch TV? Is that sad?
If they have debates, because Republicans are
I wouldn't
down
say it
on
was
debates.
Right. And right now they're not trying to have too many debates because of some of the issues that they've ignored and those fights. Because even in listening to David and dealing with the issues with DeSantis here in Florida, he spent more time fighting culture wars, fighting Disney, which are really irrelevant things. In other words, he's creating crisis just for media attention. And so it's serving him well to increase his national profile, because that's really what his aim is. Even in his last debate with Charlie Crist says, do you have an intent to be the governor for the Florida for the next 4 years? And he would not answer that question because he knows he's going to put himself out there for president. Now, what I think should happen when you have circumstances where you have individuals, i.e., if you're a senator and you want to run for president, you have to now agree to resign from that particular post, and now that post becomes an electable position, because we're paying you, you're running for another elected office, and now if you lose, you get to go settle yourself, or if you don't, you want to settle you've already neglected your district or your state if you're a senator. So I think some campaign reform needs to take place to diminish a lot of this. Because if I'm a governor and I want to run for president, I can run around the country, get paid by the people of Florida, and not be in Florida to address whatever issues are in Florida. So I think if we reform it, you'll see a difference in who will actually run for another elected office or a higher elected office versus those that are out there just grabbing whatever media attention and increasing their profile as we go along.
When we talk about
You saying, John?
when you talk about media, I feel like Republicans are winning the ad war and the media war, but they don't like the debates because they're getting dismantled in these debates, because you have to bring factual things into debates. You can't just say whatever you want to say, like you can on an ad or in the media. And I find it very funny. You mentioned Disney. I'm just tying this in. Always putting fear on these Republican-led stations, whether locally and nationally. And the biggest one that just happened was when Hanna-Barbera said that Daphne is a lesbian. And all these Republican stations went nuts. They're trying to convince your kids of this and this and that. And I'm like, guys, gay characters.
I thought it was Velma.
Thelma. Yeah, Delma. Sorry.
Velma.
I'm like, gay characters have been around in cartoons forever. We just didn't say anything. Snagglepuss. What was Snagglepuss? Like, really? Really?
Oh. Let me give you another one.
Go ahead.
Let me give you another one. You just had The Little Mermaid come out, right?
Yeah. Oh, God.
And now that she's a young lady,
Ugh.
they lost their minds. Mermaids aren't real. This is a cartoon character, but yet people lost their mind because Disney went in a different direction with it. Now, God forbid, if one of the characters come out to be Muslim, we're really going to blow the top off of America.
That was Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
You missed it.
Yeah, you missed that one. They had a
Ms.
fit
Marvel's Muslim.
I did.
about.
And
Whoa.
actually, very,
Yeah,
very, very serious treatment of questions of faith. And Ms. Marvel is one of the, I think, most interesting Avenger movies. But just but she as she describes herself, she's a brown girl from Jersey City.
Which is hilarious because us people who watch comic books knows that the first Miss Marvel was black. So it's like you're arguing because the Miss Marvel's not white anymore when she wasn't originally white in the first place. You have some, but that's something
I heard about that.
That's something that's been around forever. I remember my grandmother telling me about how people lost their minds when they came out with the black Barbie doll. Like, it's a Barbie doll. And a person like me who loves Lord of the Rings, I had to deal with it because the Rings of Power came out on Amazon and people had a fit because there was a black elf. I'm like, we've got wizards and talking trees and dragons, but where you draw the line is a black elf.
I love Lord of the Rings, so I found
At
it
the
amusing
same
as well.
time, if you are pushing a point of a worldview that says the liberals are promoting a woke agenda that's replacing you in your culture, that is trying to hem in your views, all of these are data points in support of that, right? So we see them in such a different way. And this is what DeSantis is tapping into and pushing. And so, again, it's for them, there's a lot of confirmation and a lot of support. And that's why I say that DeSantis is really the one he's riding a crest. He's riding a wave and putting a different, where we see a reimagining and kind of interesting, because I love Miss Marvel and I'm just like, wow, this is really interesting. Other people are aghast. Muslims are evil, right? Isn't that true? 9/11 taught us that. Why are you questioning my bedrock beliefs? And it's like, well, no, they're nice people who have a church, right? Their imam, they're freaking reverend. So, those are issues that I think we're seeing a lot of, and that's part of the divide we've got going on.
Yeah.
You are not allowed to look at the perceived enemy as human, as nice. Every single one of them have to be the same. We learned about this in school, the sweeping generalizations, right? All black people, all white people are racist, all black people are this, all Muslims are evil. Like, it's just, and we feeding into fears, feeding into stereotypes. And I just see a lot more of that. It's sad. I see a lot more of that in ad campaigns. That's all I kind of see on the news. And so I don't blame people when I run into people and they go, I don't watch the news. And I'm like, people go, well, how? You're not getting information. I see why. I see why people take stances of where they just, I know we get on people who don't vote and just like, I'm done with politics. And you go, how? You're not helping. But I can literally see why some people just say, you know what? I'm going to watch football and play video games. F politics. I can see why. Because you get to a point where you're like, this is foolishness. It's ridiculous. I think Dave and Harold should run for president, and that would be
hell no. I wouldn't run for city.
I'll be the vice president because the president has a target on his back. So I'll be the vice president, Dave.
Wait, hold on, Harold.
No,
Dave said I wouldn't run for PTA president. What'd you say, Dave?
I wouldn't run for any of that. Damn. No.
Yeah. We just had. We're about to end. We just had Dave. Dave lives in Carolina. It's Kinston, North Carolina. We had an entire police force quit because an African American lady was named town commissioner. Some people will say, well, that wasn't the reason they quit, but it was just hilarious. She got in her 30-year history, there's not been one issue that she's had, but yet they all quit. And I'm like, well, how are you serving the community because you all quit because you disagree with who got elected town council member or whatever it was? It was a big ordeal up here in my area. It's kind of ridiculous, but hey, these things are still happening.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Everybody, don't be fearful. Do your research. Even when listening to us talk, You still got to go and do your research. You still have to go and do your research, credible sources, and learn to think on your own. Don't be a puppet. Don't be a sheep. Join us next time on the conversation with the awesome Dave Hayes and the even awesomer. No, I said that inappropriately. The awesome Dave Hayes and the awesome.
The more awesome, the truly awesome, authentically awesome, really awesome.
Oh, I miss you guys. I've missed you guys, and I've missed this uncomfortable back and forth sometimes. All right.
All right.
Join us on the next one, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Take care.